All right. Hi, everyone. So as you may know, this meeting is recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. So we've got a few agenda items. So the first one is the GKE scheduler SLOs. So I wrote a doc exploring opportunities to export metrics that better represent, that can be used as SLIs for potential SLOs for anyone who is deploying a scheduler or like a managed service like Google or AWS. One at the higher level, one challenge, GK. One challenge with scheduler SLOs is that the scheduler itself has a lot of dependencies that prevents us from giving guarantees to anyone when a pod can be scheduled. And I'm talking here primarily about latency SLOs. And so this document explores this. What are our dependencies? How can we provide SLOs for pods that do not have dependencies on external components? Basically, this is as a first step. So please take a look at the document. I'm planning to have a first cut at its implementation, probably this cycle, as experimental. It's not going to be like official or whatnot. My hope is that I would like to get this as soon as possible so that we can experiment with and see how the parameters should look like, etc. Anyone have any comments about the scheduler SLOs?
What is an SLO? I haven't heard of that term before.
A service level objective. And so one definition, if you look at the document, you might get have like an idea of what it is.
Yeah, I was trying to just briefly skim that to get an idea. I was wondering if you could summarize.
Yeah, sure. So one definition of SLO would look like this. I have a service, and my service guarantees, like for example, the scheduler does a specific task, which is placing pods on nodes. One SLO provided by the scheduler could be, I guarantee you that your pod will be scheduled within Y seconds. Like more practically, what you would say is, if you give me like X number of pods, then I guarantee you that Y percentage of them are going to be scheduled within Z seconds. And this is important to implement and deploy predictable services on top of Kubernetes. It's also important for us as either like maintainers of the scheduler or even as people who manage who provide a managed service to monitor the behavior of the scheduler and set up alerting and whatnot around those expectations. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yep. Thanks.
I will provide a couple of links to more details about what SLOs in general are, like at the higher level for any service. This document mostly tries to define it for pod scheduling latency. Okay. If there are no other questions about this or concerns, we can move to the second item, which is preemption refactoring into a post filter. So this is progressing well with refactoring most of the code that currently exists in generic scheduler. And now most that code can be moved as is into a post filter. So where do you have any comments on this? Or?
Yes. Last time I think I raised a huge PR, and after that, I suggest to split that into several small ones. Yeah. So even with small ones, still each one has X has an L label on that. So it's a good practice for both for all contributors to kind of split a large PR into several small and reviewable PRs. Yeah, that's a best practice in our PR reviewing. So that's a good suggestion. And right now, I think 70 or 80% of the work has been done. So all the hard-coded preemption logic will be moved into a default preemption package. As I will also use this chance to reflect the existing unit tests, because some of them in both the writing styles as well as the maybe some useless and dead code is there. I will use this chance to clean them up. I think when this is completed, I will demo it a bit, how it works for both in-tree usage as well as out-of-tree usage on extending the post-filter extending point. For example, you can solve some unscheduled conditions that the default preemption is not able to handle. For example, right now, the default preemption logic can only preempt the path on a single node. But we don't want to limit this to the developers. So maybe I will use a demo to demo the possible solution to fix more conditions on preemption. So our general purpose is that we open the extension point for users to be more creative and do whatever preemption they want. So that is the purpose.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think this is on track to get in before the end. I think this work is on track to get in before the freeze, especially with the extension of the freeze to
exactly.
9th of July.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Any questions about or concerns about refactoring preemption into a post filter? Okay. The next agenda item is extremely important, I think, in cutting all the dependencies that we have on KK code, most of them. Is that you, Mike, that added the item?
Yeah, that was me. So what I added here was Jan actually went, I don't see him on the call, but Jan went through and for the core V1 helper specifically, because we have a bunch of different internal dependencies, so we just have to break it down by package, I think. And these are a big one. He went through and looked at all the core V1 helpers that we're using. And the big question really that we're having in this thread is what ones are stable enough that it's safe to copy them other places so you don't need to depend on them, and what ones is there still a chance that they could change, and those should be moved into some sort of external importable location. So there's a couple questions going on in the thread. Jan did a really good job of very thoroughly exploring which helpers we're using, where they're imported from, and what they provide. But my take on this is that if they're helpers for V1 API types, then those API types shouldn't really be changing at all underneath them, right? So those should, in theory, be safe to duplicate anywhere. And some of these functions are simple, like checking if a taint is tolerated by a toleration. That's something that I don't think will ever really change.
Right, but the question is, why would we have it in the first place if it is simple enough and can be duplicated? I guess the point is here, can we move this into staging? Can we try to lead an effort? I know it's outside scheduling, but I think it's extremely important that will allow us and maybe probably other components to cut these dependencies and make them only on staging. Those helpers moving into staging. I think there are some utility functions already in staging.
Yeah, I don't know where some of these are in staging already. I think the closest repo that I could think of would be like the API machinery for like a toolbox of helpers like this.
But that's the part of, you know, the effort is to understand, like to connect with the right people, like whoever owns, for example, those functions or maintaining them, start a discussion with them to see where those can be moved under a staging repo. So it's, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you see that we did tag, well, Jan tagged all of the owners for these functions to try to get.
Yeah, that's not gonna.
Yeah.
Like I think we need a more targeted, like connect with them directly, open an issue, for example, to like make your best guess about a specific function, moving it into a specific, you know, staging repo, and start a review, and that will start the conversation around where those should be. Maybe the first guess of yours is not going to be right, but it will at least really force them to start the discussion and start the ball rolling, basically. Tagging all these people in, like I know, like I'm looking at it, like I know like half of them are not going to reply. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So this is what I would suggest. Like just start with your best guess for some of these functions, raise a PR, and get the discussion rolling on that PR. So that's one way, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good point, because we can talk about what we think should be done with them, but really, I think we're ready to just start moving code, and people will holler if they don't like it.
Exactly.
But if anyone does have anything that they want to do or help out with these PRs, this is a good place to start. That's what I'm going to be starting with, is taking these V1 helpers, and I think those are a bulk of our dependencies and other people's dependencies.
Any questions? Okay, one last item is I'm proposing to cancel the 5 p.m. meeting. We've been canceling it pretty much consistently for the past few months. It's sort of late, this meeting, and I'm not sure it's providing too much value. So we have two options: either just cancel it, or we cancel it and extend the bi-weekly meeting into 1 hour. I don't feel that the second option is necessary at this point. I don't think like our discussions or conversations requires 1 hour. But I think we can start with just canceling this one and keep a bi-weekly meeting of half an hour. What do you guys think?
I think bi-weekly is fine.
Yeah, bi-weekly is fine. Maybe we can extend the 10 a.m. meeting, 1 p.m. for Eastern time. For the morning meeting, extend the time if needed.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was suggesting that we could extend it to 1 hour. I think 1 hour probably is too much. Like we can keep going with the current setup, which is half an hour. I don't think we've ever had like a problem with it unless there is a guest. But other than that, I don't know. I think we're already good enough with half an hour.
Yeah. Just extend that on demand.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had much of a problem going past half an hour.
All right.
Maybe we can discuss a little bit about this issue that I shared with Mike. So there is there's a pod toleration. Let me recap. So, and let's say a node has a taint, and then the pod has a toleration, which includes a toleration seconds. So what this means is that basically the pod wouldn't be wouldn't be evicted before that that toleration seconds have passed. But it could happen that a new pod that has a toleration would get scheduled, and it would basically run for a little bit, and then it would be evicted almost immediately. Well, not almost immediately. Depends on the running time of depends on timeout. So the question is whether or not this is desired, um, that that a pod gets scheduled to the node anyways.
If there's an issue open for this one, maybe we can.
Yeah, there is. Maybe we can share.
And place it on the agenda as well.
Yeah, if you can.
I'll
I
place it in the
don't
agenda.
have that either, but yeah, I was looking at that with Aldo, and it seems to me like, so the point is like, if the node has a no execute taint and you have a toleration for it, this is my thinking of, is that if you have a toleration for the no execute, you should still be allowed to be scheduled on there. And just because you have toleration seconds applied, his use case, the person that reported its use case, is a 30-second toleration seconds gets these pods into like an eviction loop where it gets scheduled and then evicted later. But there isn't really a set definition of whether toleration seconds should only apply for pods that are already running, or if it's acceptable that a pod can be scheduled with a toleration seconds and then eventually, like, knowing that it's going to be evicted eventually. The other thing is that the taint could be evicted before the toleration, or removed before the toleration seconds is up. And in that case, I don't know if the pod would be evicted at all. Something that I didn't even think of in the issue. But it was reported as a bug, and I don't think it's clearly a bug.
Yeah, it's a gray area. I think.
So just for me to understand, so the case is you have a pod with a toleration for no execute, with a timeout, you call it, and it's whether the scheduler is allowed to place the pod on that node. Is that correct?
Right, or if it should just ignore a toleration with toleration seconds set and basically imagine that it's not there when scheduling. Was the proposal, at least.
Okay. So that like it's still allowed to execute there for that 30 seconds, you mean?
No, that's how it is right now, is that it's allowed to schedule on because it has a toleration, but because it has toleration seconds, the question was if it's worth it to even schedule knowing that it's going to be evicted eventually.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the point. But if anything, it may be possible to have some kind of scoring around it, so that it would prefer nodes that don't have the taint. But yeah, that's something we can discuss in the issue.
Sounds good. Okay, other topics or issues that you guys would like to bring to the SIG's attention?
Yeah, one issue, but maybe not issue, is one maybe best practice or one convention pattern on using the shared informer factory, the list from the shared informer factory. So one symptom we met is that for some API resource, for example, the PDB, we don't need to use the informer to get the update immediately when it happens, right? We just need the lister to fetch the API resource list. So for that kind of resources, it quite depends on when we initialize the list properly. If we don't, the first time we use that lister to get the resource list, is empty. So so I'm not sure what's the best practice and the conventional pattern to trigger the initialization of the lister. So I posted one question in API machinery, but nobody answered yet. So I'm not sure anyone else has some suggestion on that. Not sure you understand this little problem.
Right. So when you get the lister instance from the shared environment factory, the first time you get it, it's going to be empty because this is when initialization actually happens.
Yes. Yes.
And if you just simply try to get the lister every time during pod scheduling cycle, then this is going to be a problem because for the first pod, you're going to get nothing and you're not going to act properly. And so the proper way of doing this, or the expected way, I guess, from the perspective of API machinery, is probably that you're going to have to take the instance at scheduler initialization. And in our case, this is since this lister, like the pod disruption budget lister, is mostly going to be used, it's going to be used by a specific plugin, which is the preemption plugin. Then, to me, it sounds clear that the proper place to do that is in the post filter of the instantiation of that post filter. And so you basically take a a reference of it at that point, and so you get the lister properly initialized. And I think this makes sense because you don't want the shared environment factory to initialize all listers and get everything in and requested that for things that you're never going to use, right? So I think that's the reason behind why they do delayed initialization. And so to me, it sounds like reasonable to just do it at post filter plugin initialization. Same thing we're doing for CSI related listers. So I don't think it's a it's a problem at this point.
Not quite sure because from my perspective, you're already passing the shared information factory to individual plugin, right, through the Flink handle. So that means we can already fetch the PDB lister from the shared information factory. So it sounds to me that it's a bit unnecessary to define another PDB lister specifically in
no, you're not. It's just the first initialization. I don't think you are.
Okay.
So the first one, whoever calls it is going to initialize
that. Makes sense. Yeah, then it makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, you're not replicating any data or anything. It's just that this is like a lazy initialization behavior.
I see your point.
You've got 3 more minutes. Any other topics?
Hey, this is Sean. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. I have one question. So for the descheduler, there's a couple people that are new contributors that are interested in adding some features. I think there's some GitHub issues out there related to some enhancements. And I guess my question is, what would be the process to create one of those design review documents like Google Documents? I think there's 2 specific issues I can think of that we might want to use that process for.
So the way that I at least been doing it is you create a Google Doc with the proposed feature design, and you share it on Kubernetes dev and Kubernetes SIG-Scheduling. So you give access to all these people to comment on it. So to me, this is a first step into getting initial feedback about this feature, and then I don't know if you would like to follow the KIP process, but I don't know if you have to because you are a separate component from KK.
Okay, so is there a template that should be used for the Google Doc or?
No, I don't think there is.
Okay.
You can look at the this SLO doc as an example,
Okay.
for example. So I mean, it's as simple as like objective, intro, and then like describing what the problem trying to solve, and then problem solutions and options, like, and which one is the preferred one.
To make it clear, it's a community doc.
Yeah, make it clear it's a
That's all,
public
yeah.
community.
Okay, sure. Yeah, there were there's some people hitting me up in Kubernetes Slack that want to contribute to the descheduler. So I think it's like specifically more specifics, I guess, on this. I think there's a feature, a GitHub feature issue for adding an option to filter by namespace, pods to evict by namespace and label selector. So I think these might be good things for new contributors to work on. So we might want to just review those kind of feature proposals, and then we might be able to have some new contributors work on those.
Sounds good.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. Or on time. Okay. Thank you all.
See you.
Thank you.
Hey,
Bye.
thanks.
Thank you.